Good afternoon. So my name's Rolf. I work in further education. So that is post 16. I work across the north of England, supporting colleges with the way they engage with faith and belief. Half of my time, however, is spent exclusively in West Yorkshire, developing chaplaincy in further education. And the other half of my time, I'm going across the small area of the northwest, northeast, and the rest of Yorkshire and the Humber. I was the chaplain at Bradford College for 3 years, so I have some chaplaincy experience. But I won't bore you now with the details of how FE, further education, is often marginalised and overlooked, etc., etc. But for those of you who don't know, you will live near a further education college that delivers not only A-levels, but most vocational type courses. A lot of HE degrees are delivered in FE colleges now as well. So that's me, briefly.
I'm at the other end of the age scale. I'm a primary school chaplain. I was the first certainly in Darlington, I think in Durham as well, the Diocese of Durham. So I've been in there 4 years now at a primary school with 200 children in Darlington. So it's Rolf's huge area, mine tiny. But it's been a real privilege to be part of. It's a chaplaincy that's funded directly by the school. There's no outside funding. I'm not part of a charity or anything like that. And to be in a school that committed to a chaplaincy 4 years ago is something very special, and I'm very privileged to be part of it.
Just because these guys are chaplains, I wouldn't want you to think that this is a conversation just about chaplaincy, because we sense that there's something even bigger than that happening, but they bring a particular understanding, perhaps, or an experience of spiritual life in schools. And we thought it's really interesting to bring people from the kind of both ends of the spectrum, the kind of Key Stage 1, 2 end and the Key Stage 5 end, because that supplements some of what's already in the room. So, first of all, one of the first questions we asked was, what's anything that you've done? Is there things that you've done that have helped the spiritual life of the school, the place where you're working, kind of beyond the prayer space? There's one or two people nodding. So put a hand up if you've got something that you'd like to contribute to this bit of the conversation.
Hi. It's not something that I have done.
Tell you what, can we stand up? Is that all right? Yes, okay. And just tell us a little bit about where you work.
Okay, so in Penrith, in the Carlisle Diocese, a team of us got together and decided to call ourselves the chaplaincy team. We represent 7 different church denominations within the area. We met to pray, to work within all of the schools together. This has all been prior to prayer spaces, but they've been something that's developed out of the work we've done. So it covered prayer, as in out of the school, assemblies, lessons, whatever our own giftings would be. But we strategically decided to cross over from secondary to primary with year 6s. So all of us aren't delivering all the stuff, but we are aware of what we're all doing. And then we culminate in the secondary schools as a chaplaincy team and all offer our skills in the secondary school. So it's not what's happening in one school, it's strategically together, resourcing and supporting each other to cover all the schools in the area.
Wow. How many schools are you covering? Roughly?
2 secondary schools, that's all there is in the area. Yeah. And, I would say, let's say 10 primary schools.
Wow. And how many of you?
7.
Wow. And how are you resourced, funded? I guess people are going, wow, I wish we had that in our area.
Okay, well, we all work for a different organisation. Some are vicars, clergy, curates. Some work for Christian organisations, some are volunteers. So we just gather people along the way that might want to get alongside. And then those volunteers generally end up being involved in the running of a prayer space. And then they suddenly realise it's not so scary and they might help at a lunch club or I don't know, after school clubs at primary schools. So we have fingers in lots of pies, but try and do it all together.
Quite like the lots of pies idea, yeah. Anybody got questions to... Did that kind of make you go, oh, I wish I knew... Sometimes you hear somebody's story and you think, yes, but I'd like to ask a question about that. Any questions? been 10 or 15 years in.
It's been, yeah, it's like a 10-year process, but it's been in the last 3 years where we've really tightened our strategy, that suddenly all the schools seem to know who we are. We have a different presence within certainly one of the secondary schools, and we're able to duplicate the model because other schools are going, oh, we'd like some of that, please. That looks like something's going on there that we want to be a part of. So it's...
Sorry. I don't understand it. I just saying we've noticed, especially this September,
I have to stand up to help the microphone.
the difference in going into school, just the reaction of the teachers and the pupils to us as well. Things are shifting, aren't they? But it's a long process, and sometimes you get asked for a win-win situation, don't you? Or you want people say, well, how many people, numbers, play the numbers game. It's not like that. It's long-term relationships that you're building up and building up.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, somebody else had over here. Can I just suggest, could you hold the microphone near the top, not near the bottom, because the bottom is where the apparently.
Sorry, this was just two things to involve like the wider community. One was that when I was a parent governor in the school that I now work, I started a prayer group for parents to come into school and pray, which I think is really good because it engages parents of students to be more concerned about the prayer needs of the school. And the other thing is that I work in a Christian school, so obviously I've got the support of the school in this, but the school does a welcome service in Year 7 to welcome the children and their families to the school in the evening. So we did that a couple of weeks ago, but that felt like a really nice way to kind of nail our colours to the mast with the parents and say, this... Is it gone? This is the school that your children are at. This is kind of our beliefs. That was quite a good way. And a lot of non-Christian parents who've chosen the school, knowing that it's a Christian school, have come to that and really enjoyed it. And then the other thing was last Friday we did a Macmillan Cancer Day, morning with coffee and cake, but we did a half-hour service with, and parents were invited to that. So they're just quite nice ways of drawing in the bigger community.
Sarah, can I just ask you how your role as chaplain in a primary school, how's that connected with the community, with parents and stuff like that?
I think there I am. I love this microphone. I want one of these for school. Feels like a pop star. It's brilliant. No, I think it's the wider community is so important, and I think one of the things I was just chatting about before this was the idea that people know where we're coming from. And I think that's so important because part of my kind of philosophy of chaplaincy when I set off, and it sounds like it's kind of your teams as well, is kind of very practical. Just like a couple of examples, kind of setting up a second-hand uniform shop, something like that, setting up a credit union savings scheme, setting up, really practical things. But to actually give it that kind of grounding in the love and grace of God, and for people to be aware that is why these things are there, that's what we believe. That brings in the wider community because you're offering something that's really useful, but it's also saying to them why you are doing what you're doing. And then I think from that, the more, if you like, the more kind of faith-based opportunities, such as prayer groups, such as kind of discussion groups, such as prayer spaces, all of a sudden the kind of the what's that all about? It goes, because actually we're a school about love and a school about God and a school about, being there together as the family of God. And actually that can come in second-hand uniform, or it can come in a prayer space, or it can come in a service, or it can come... I think that's so important to actually kind of nail your colours to the mast in a way that isn't scary, in a way that's accessible to everybody, and to find as many opportunities as possible to say, for example, prayer spaces, keep them open till 4. Don't close your prayer space at the end of the school day. Keep it open till 4. Say to parents or whoever's picking the kids up, mates, whoever, say, come along, it's still open. I'm talking from a primary school perspective, but if you've got parents or Friends, you know, you might want to say to your church, your local church, say, would you fancy coming in and keeping it open on one Saturday morning? You know, sweet talk the caretaker, tin of biscuits, box of chocolates, works a wonder. You know, and maybe you could do that. But I think bringing in the wider community as to why you are doing what you do makes those opportunities for a more faith-based interaction so much more easy.
It's slightly different in FE in terms of relating to the outside community. Often because FE colleges are massive. So, for example, Leeds City College, which I support, has 52,000 students. So the concept of relating to the parents of all those students is quite mind-blowing. But it's safe to say that, and people may be aware of this just from the press, that increasingly we're aware that there's enormous faith illiteracy throughout society. And I find particularly at senior management levels within colleges, they are completely inured from doing anything because they're so aware of their deficiencies, and woe betide any manager in a college who admits they don't know anything. I found that as chaplain in Bradford College that I was almost having to give permission to managers to admit they didn't know something and trust me to start informing them. And one of the things I would find myself doing was trying to find the allies externally in the faith communities to talk to them. Well, what's your understanding of the college? What does a college do? How do you think a college should or could support your community's faith needs? So in Bradford, of course, we have a massive Muslim community. And one of the things I found myself obliged to do was to relate to the Council for Mosques. That was something, with hindsight, that took away from some pastoral needs that I think went unaddressed. And I must admit that today I feel grossly unqualified to talk about the prayer spaces because I got drawn very frequently into lots of policy, management, strategic types of things. But Lat referred earlier to this idea of clearing the ground. I think particularly the higher up the age spectrum you go, the more ground there is to be cleared in terms of access to students in order to do some of this exciting discovery work. And that's been my experience in FE, that working with the faith community and proving myself to the college can be a way of them opening up a little bit, allowing that space to breathe. Because in many institutions right now, they just don't do God. That's their approach. And faith spaces equals God. And so there's a lot of unpacking to do there.
Okay. Right, there's a hand at back. Oh, have you got... Okay, there's one here, and then we'll come over there. Thanks.
I helped run a prayer space at my school earlier this year, and soon became aware that there was a year for children who were using the space each day at lunchtime. So I've been able to invite them to make a team and to actually help plan events and get them more involved in services. And they're really enthusiastic, and there's not a week that goes by where they don't ask me when we're meeting again. And they're, as a group, going to plan the next prayer space. So I just thought I'd share that.
That's really exciting. There's one or two activities on the Prayer Space in Schools website resources section which were created by students in a middle school in Suffolk. So the person who was running Prayer Spaces there, they'd done 2 or 3, and then they got the young people to create some. So that's brilliant. Has anybody else had student involvement in just the broad picture of making spiritual life happen? It might be a prayer space or something else. Anybody else had student involvement? Just pick that up for a minute, and then we'll come back to the question over here. Yeah. Because I think this is one of the areas of huge potential, but it's a little bit untapped, and so it really helps to hear stories of where people have got it to work. Yeah.
Just a short comment on involving students in prayer spaces. We've run one prayer space in a primary school, but we involved some sixth form students from our local Church of England school who were very experienced with working with children through our church holiday club, and they were brilliant guides in the prayer space for the younger children. They were great role models and were really helpful.
That's really helpful, yeah. That's good. There were 1 or 2 other hands in response to that question about people that have got pupil involvement. There was one down towards my... And then I haven't forgotten, there's a new question down in the back corner over there.
So, to say that
Please stand up.
I went to a local comprehensive school just to do. I was stepping in because we hadn't got a youth worker. I'm a pastoral worker. I felt quite out of my depths, but one of the girls at exam time asked whether it would be possible to have a place in this very big comprehensive school that students could go and pray. So I directed her to the right people. She emailed the head, and she got this place for the students to go and pray. And just a couple of weeks ago, the head got in touch to say, could this be more of a permanent thing? Hence, that's why I'm here learning very quickly.
The two issues, one of the things that I've found, trends, trying to pick up trends that are going on in education, and mindfulness. Many people might have heard about this, and Lat referred earlier to the sort of a theology of pluralness and thinking, well, where are their allies? This idea of stress at exam time, stress particularly for staff, and creating that space, whether it's called mindfulness, if you're going to adopt a more sort of a Buddhist approach, but finding those links into space for prayer or thinking or meditation or reflection, I'm finding that incredibly helpful in FE. And great allies there, again, the higher up the sort of age range you go, most colleges have either student councils or, better yet, NUS, National Union of Students, affiliated groups where you've got student ambassadors. They are like gold dust, because if your management hear the students asking for something, it's not a staff idea or it's not an external naggy parent, but the students are saying, I want this, I'm finding that that's going to open a lot more doors too. So that's just really a word to those people who are finding it hard to find those allies.
To that, sorry, just very briefly, this is actually the 10th anniversary of the Youth Council of the Church happening next door on Friday night, and that's actually another rich resource, because that's young people in their gap years, 18 to 25, looking for ways to serve through their local church. And I'll be over there with a prayer space and school stall if you're going and you want to visit me. But I think that's another great way that we can resource our local schools, is looking for those young people who want a way to serve locally when they've got that time out in between school and university. It's the Youth Council of the Church of England. It's 10 years old this Friday.
I just wanted to add a little note about the O word, the Ofsted people. We've been unfortunate enough to have Ofsted in school this last week, and one of our discussions earlier today was my difficulty in coming to terms with losing a little bit of the wow factor of a prayer space. When I first set up prayer space days in my school, the kids could come into our main school hall, a huge building, and it was wow. And they were like, yeah, this is amazing. I've taken a decision in school through feedback from the children that they don't want it once a year. They want it all the time. So now it's like, oh, yeah, sand, fine. Yeah, paddling pool, yeah, whatever. You know, and it's like they'll come and they'll love it and it's great, but the wow factor has gone slightly. Ofsted came in on Wednesday and they were offered a student tour. Primary school, they were offered a student tour. And the lead inspector man said, absolutely, yes, yeah. So our students, a group of about 12 students, took this guy around our relatively small primary school. It's only 200 pupils. And they get to the chapel, the little designated room that's a chapel. And in one corner, there's mounds of Play-Doh sculpted into who knows what. And in another corner, there was the Fizzy Forgiveness vase. And it was like toxic waste. It was, I don't know if any of you have done Fizzy Forgiveness, you must change your water regularly. It was like toxic, bubbling, festering waste. And the guy kind of goes, what's this? And the students were like, it's a prayer space, moving on. And he went, whoa! whoa, hang on, and cut them back. And then they launched into this incredible kind of discussion about prayer and about how there's more ways to talk to God than just putting your hands together, you know. And they were just brilliant, these kids, because prayer spaces have been built into our school life. And the activities, more the activities than the space, have been built into our school life. And it kind of, this guy was just blown away by these kids and this discussion of prayer through prayer spaces. And in the feedback, although it's not official yet, we have received highly positive feedback for our SMSC, which is brilliant. Bearing in mind our school requires improvement 2 years ago, so we've like gone right way up. It's brilliant. And it's just to really encourage you to kind of get your students involved, get them involved and take the lead from them. And I'm conscious that we've lost a bit of the wow factor. I know, and Ofsted know, that actually if these kids take interesting, interactive, engaging prayer for granted, brilliant. You know, fantastic. And that'll build into the rest of their lives, hopefully.
That's awesome. Now, there was a question over here, which I hadn't forgotten about, so thank you. Let's hope the mic works that far away. Yeah.
Hi. I work in a school as a teacher, and we're in the process of working towards a prayer space. At the moment, we have what's called an interactive spiritual space. And I work with the local Methodist minister, and he's, bless him, has recruited some members from his church, and the people available are ladies of a certain age, we have planning meetings together, and it's very interesting. And I spend a very long time communicating how simple the idea for the prayer space or interactive spiritual space must be. But in conversation with other members of the school and listening to what's going on here, we've got a lot of sort of Christian groups outside of a school going into a school and organising a prayer space. And we're slightly different in that we sort of started within the school and have brought people in. And the school are quite keen for us to invite that we invite people of other faiths onto the group that all runs the prayer space. So what people think about that? Having the faiths involved.
Okay, so just to that is how do we, where there is a certain amount of pressure from within the school to involve other faith groups in what sounds like a fairly healthy and ongoing process of doing spiritual stuff. Sounds like you're doing prayer spaces, but just they've got a different title. Yeah. Anybody like to respond to that? Lat's able to, if he wants to, or Rolf, or Phil.
I think I'm right in saying we've only heard of one example of a prayer space that was set up with activities from different faith backgrounds, and it really didn't work. It didn't work from the school's perspective, and it certainly didn't work from the children's perspective, because they actually got really confused. Not only that, but the Muslim children got quite upset when other children wanted to come and join in with their prayer on the mat and were treading on the corner of the mat and such like. So we found, although the idea seemed to be something that the school were really excited about and really keen on, it really didn't work in practice. And so we're quite clear that as Christians, we're running this prayer space. We cannot authentically host a prayer space that represents prayer from different faith traditions. We cannot do that. However, the activities that we provide, we think are so universal and generic. Yes, they are implicitly kind of resonant with the Christian tradition, but they're welcoming to all. They're welcoming to those of all faiths and none. So we've gone down that route really from day one, confident that as Christians we can host a prayer space that's welcoming to all faiths and none. However, a prayer space that represents prayer from different Christian traditions is actually extremely difficult to host.
Just really quickly, that's where it's really important, the team you have The team of people you have running a prayer space can make all the difference, and you need to be sure that the people you have running the prayer space are aware that there might be children from different faiths coming, and that they are happy to let those children engage with those activities in their own way. And if they start discussing or talking about other faith traditions, that's absolutely fine. As far as I know, the idea of bubbles is not in a particular holy book. And you've got to remember that. The idea of a sandpit and making an impression is not in it's not in the doctrine of one religion or another. And you've got to kind of bear that in mind. But you people are all here, and we're all here because we understand what Prayer Spaces is about. With the best will in the world, you'll get some of your volunteers who kind of can't make the meeting, but yes, I'll be there on the day. But just make sure that they are aware that some children might be coming to access it in their own way.
This is a really fascinating conundrum in further education, in that, and this might surprise people, but actually lots of colleges have prayer rooms. And that's often because Muslim staff or students have requested a place to pray. And so I'm in that rather weird situation of going, well, actually, we've got a space. How might we best use it? And I had the enormous privilege of working with the architects for the plans for a new building that's gone up at Bradford College. But the dilemma we had when thinking about the prayer space, which then I kept arguing we had to call a multi-faith space, which we then wanted to push beyond that and give it another sort of name. But the dilemma was this. We want to create a permanent space that everybody feels they have access to, but on the other end of the spectrum was accepting that actually the footfall would come mostly from those people who, as a duty in their faith, will want to go and find somewhere to pray. So this was always the dilemma. So one of the things I did when I was working on the architect's plans was to draw together a multi-faith reference group, which sounds a little bit similar to what your scenario sounds like a group, a coalition of the willing. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It was a nightmare. Firstly, because it's actually very difficult from particularly small faith communities. So in Bradford, Hindu Sikh representatives, I found it really hard to find external or even internal staff who'd be willing to be part of this group. But also I found my Muslim colleagues to be very, very clear, very clear ideas about what it was they required from this space. And I can only imagine that if you were trying to host a space together, that those problems would simply mushroom again. So I think one of the things again, trying to find that neutral space. For example, one of the things we've argued that we need to have in this prayer room, although we don't call it that, is there will be times when there will be no formal prayer as such, in order to allow people just to come in and use the space for whatever they want to do. That inherently causes problems and conversations. And I forget whether it was here a few years ago. I think it was LAT 2 years ago. You said something brilliant about the fact that actually multi-faith spaces, or call them what you will, are inherently helpful to preparing young people for the real world, because they're about dialogue and they're about developing those life skills where it's about compromise. And that sounds very, very different to this sort of prayer spaces and schools stuff, which actually is something I've never done in an FE setting, and I can't wait to do. Interestingly, and then I'll shut up, I was actually let go by Bradford College a year ago, right when they were in the middle of building this new fancy schmancy building with this new prayer space. And quite unsurprisingly, in the last few months, I've gone back and I've said, hey, I'm quite happy to do a day a week's chaplaincy for you. How do you fancy that? And they've bitten my arm off because they've realised how incredibly political managing these spaces are, and they need somebody who they can trust. And I think chaplains or people who are keen are really good people to do that. I'm sorry if that doesn't particularly answer your conundrum. I think Phil's first point was really wise, though, that just be clear about what it is you're wanting to do.
That's good, thank you. Another one down here.
I was just going to say it was a little bit about the multi-faith thing, because I'm a parent in a school which is mainly Muslim kids. And we have a lunchtime club for the kids, which is Godly Play, so we call it Wonder Club. So it's open to, they can be thinking about any religion while you're doing this, you're telling your Bible story, but you're not preaching at them, you're not telling them what it means. It's up to them to process it for themselves afterwards, and they use the creative materials to express themselves through that. And then we have a parents' prayer group as well. And this term we've been praying for, there are 26 nations represented in our school from their families. And we've been praying for each country in the parents' prayer group each week, which is happening right now, I think. And they're praying for Somalia today. And one of the Somalian mums has gone to give prayer points to the Christian people praying there, and she's a Muslim. We had a mum from Iraq come to the last one, and she was just really thankful to us for caring about their country and praying for them. So that's just another thing to think about. And I'm thinking about how we can... It's interesting to hear what you're saying about the multi-faith conundrums as well for me. Anyway, I just thought that might be helpful, praying for the world kind of stuff brings people together.